heritage from the Lord. That means when you receive a child into your home, you're receiving a great blessing. As parents, we have a direct responsibility to train those children in righteousness.
We understand that as parents, you have a loving concern for them and a desire to raise them in this way, but sometimes we feel ill-equipped to train them.
Enter Parenting on Purpose. We want you to know that regardless of where you're at in your parenting journey, you have an amazing opportunity to make disciples of Jesus right where you're at in your home, and we want to help.
Parenting on Purpose, then, is designed for parents, by parents. Whether it's the guests we bring on the show, the resources we recommend, or just the knowledge that you're not in it alone, we hope you're encouraged in this task that God has given you.
Today, we're going to be meeting with Anthony and Rachel Bailey. Guys, welcome. Glad that you are here. Thanks for coming to be with us and talk about this much important topic. So today, what we're really going to discuss is stewarding your child's time. But before we get into that, just take a second and introduce yourselves and tell us about your family.
So we are the Baileys, Anthony and Rachel. We have been married about almost 23 years and came to Cross Gates as newlyweds, so we've been here about 21 years. We have 4 sons.
Wow.
Yeah.
4 boys.
4 boys. Lots of noise and odd smells. So we have 4 boys. Our oldest is Jonathan. He's 20. He's a college sophomore. Joseph is 17. He's a high school junior. Daniel is 13, he's in the 8th grade, and Joshua is 10, and he's in the 4th grade. So we have college, high school, junior high, and elementary all in one house.
Yeah,
got them all.
You
so
hit
we
all
do.
The criteria.
And briefly, we had 3 teenagers in the house at one time. So there you go.
Yeah, God bless y'all. That is
crowns in heaven. That's all I'm
that's
gonna
right.
say.
You've already won your reward for sure. So obviously you guys have not only parented for a while now, but are still in the midst of it. And so you kind of see it from both perspectives, but both what has worked and then what hasn't. But when we talk about the topic of time, you have, and with your first son in mind, you got 20 years worth of time, right? Youngest, you got 10 years that has gone by. But how do we steward this well? We're talking about years and years of these boys' lives. And so for parents, why is it so important to take stewarding their time seriously? Why do we need to talk about this?
Well, it's really important, but stewarding our kids' time is really just part of being a parent, right? It's not the only thing. So, like we've talked about before, Rachel and I have, we believe parenting is a calling from God that's been on our lives ever since Adam and Eve. He told them to go be fruitful and multiply. So he intended for them to be parents. And he's taught us through his word and through examples in the Bible of how we should be parents and how we should teach our children. We've got a saying that life's a teachable moment, in that everything you do is a way to teach your children, help them to learn, and help us to learn as well. And so stewarding our children's time is just part of that. And it's a very important part, obviously, because time management and helping our kids understand how to use their time wisely helps prepare them for the future, because they're not going to be kids all of their lives, right? They're going to be adults.
Hopefully not. Yeah.
And
hopefully at some point these boys move out.
That's right. And at some point, they're going to have to get up and go to class on their own if they go to college, or they're going to have to get up and go to work and be there at a particular time and start and be prepared and ready to go. Or they're going to have deadlines when, for a school project or a work project or something like that. And then, one of the most important things is, how do you prioritize your time so that you can spend time with the Lord every day, right? And as parents, I can tell you that I don't always do that well, but I can do it the way I do it because of how my parents invested in me and showed me from the beginning. So we've got to teach our children, model for our children what we need to do, how they should do things, so that they understand. And managing your time planning out how you do things is a very important part of that.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for speaking to that. And I love what you said just about the reality of what the Bible says about how from the beginning we were created to become parents, and obviously the fall plays a part in that. So not everyone does, but for those who do become parents, you are fulfilling a calling, and a very ancient calling that God has placed in the hearts of people. And so obviously stewarding the time that we do have with our kids is important. This is kind of heightened though, Rachel, right now. Absolutely. Because we have a lot of parents who are spending more time than they ever have with their kids because kids are out of school. Sure. So right now we have the COVID-19 virus that's everywhere. We're still in quarantine here in Mississippi. But how does that heighten the importance of making sure we're being intentional?
Sure. So, kids are not going back to school. We all know that at this point. So they're there, and they're there for an extended period of time. So we can go about that two different ways. We can kind of lament that and be upset or disappointed, or something that the Lord showed me personally in the midst of a little grumbling session was, our kids generally in a normal day, we have very little influence as they get older in what they see as their identity, what things are pouring into them, what's feeding them, what influences them throughout the day. The older they get, the less time that parents have to pour into that. And so this is a really amazing, unique opportunity where all of a sudden they're back under our fold, back under our wings. And the majority of the influence they're getting is coming from that parent again. And so what an amazing opportunity to pour into, obviously from small all the way up, but even into our older kids, to remind them of all those things that we've wanted to teach them from an early age, of who they are in Christ and what He desires of them and how to walk it. And so I think while it's challenging, it offers some amazing opportunities for parents to do things that will have a lifelong impact. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
you almost begin to see time as a currency
Absolutely.
That is now full in your bank account to use to your advantage.
Sure.
As
Absolutely.
a family and as a parent.
Sure. And looking for those things, we've talked about this, looking for those areas in our children where we realize maybe we didn't teach them something we thought we had, or maybe by mistake or omission we taught them something that we wish we had not. And we can go back and correct those things, and maybe reinforce some positive behaviors and reinforce some positive thoughts to help correct some areas where maybe we see that we didn't know what we thought we knew at the time. So
Sure.
That's so true, because now you get to see firsthand them respond to school, respond to their classmates on Zoom calls, respond to their teacher. I didn't think about that you get to
Absolutely.
firsthand see their responses and how they process and how they...
yeah,
That's a good thing.
it's a different view into your child's world. And so
Yeah.
I think it helps
Yeah.
us to understand what areas maybe we want to kind of help fine tune.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, that's super helpful. So hey, we emailed some parents and we got some questions back, and we're going to share some questions with you guys. So we're just going to hit you with some,
Sure.
and y'all respond as the Lord leads. And so Rachel's going to ask some questions related to this idea of how do we spend our time with our kids wisely, and how do we make sure they understand that concept as well.
Yes. Okay. I'll just start with the first one. Stewarding my child's time. Does that mean I plan out everything that they do all the time? What does that
So, and I
specifically
get
mean?
that. I get that because stewarding is kind of an odd word, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's more along. Is this okay? Yeah. Guarding our child's time, and so like Anthony was saying a few minutes ago, there's going to come a point when they have to be responsible for their own time. And so really what you're doing, I think, is helping to guide them, to disciple them, to actually teach them how to steward their own time. And so what does that look like practically? Because that's always what we talk. All right, practically break it down. What does that look like? So for a young child, obviously, you may have to plan out a lot. But as they get older, those children should be able to have more freedom and responsibility for making decisions about their own time. And so So, we tell our kids every freedom comes with a corresponding responsibility, right? You get freedom, you have a responsibility, so you have to make that work. So that may mean for younger children that you set some boundaries, for your elementary school child, for example, saying, okay, all school work has to be finished within this time period, and then allowing them to figure out what that looks like. We have at our house 3 non-negotiables. They're things that have to be done every day. And those 3 things are school time, God time, and personal hygiene time. 4 boys.
Amen.
There you go.
That's brilliant.
So that has to be done.
Taking notes on that one.
I'm saying. So, as long as those 3 things get done, and again, you're fine tuning, you're watching. So, if you give your, 10-year-old or your 12-year-old freedom and you start to realize, okay, they're spending way too much time doing this and this is not getting done, then, you adjust that.
It's a teachable moment.
Yeah, that's it. It's a teachable moment. And so I think setting some outer boundaries of, we don't do screen time except X, whatever that is for that parent. We play outside for X amount of time, and not putting everything down to the minute, but allowing them some healthy boundaries, and then giving them the freedom to make those choices.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think that's good, because I think the heart of the question there is parents want to be intentional,
sure.
but we tend to go from one extreme to the other, right? You either, hey, you go do whatever, or we're doing this,
From
this,
8
this,
to
and
9.
this. Yeah.
Sure. And I was telling Rachel earlier, we had a conversation with our boys last night at the dinner table kind of about what we were doing today.
Okay.
And one of our boys, who shall remain nameless, said, well, here's the deal. He said, don't pull from ahead, don't push from behind, but walk beside. So it's that thing of, don't tell me what to do, don't force me, don't yank me, but give me some boundaries and let me, kind of help me stay on that path. So I think that's it with time, figuring that out. So, which looks different from birth all the way up.
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
I was really challenged because Hunter asked me this week. He was very gentle, but what would John learn from how we spend our time? Like I was like, yeah, I was like, because he is a baby, so when he goes to nap, I'll get my phone out or I'll try to get a lot of work done while he's sleeping. But he was like, what is he going to learn when he's aware? And so I think that applies to even our elementary kids and higher. What do they learn walking alongside us from how we act, respond, choose to spend our time? I don't know. It's just challenging.
Yeah.
Okay, so within kind of the same question, but getting more specific, if I allow them screen time or free play time, does that mean I'm not being intentional?
No. That's
Thank you.
that's
Yeah.
simple. So no. So, but what you have to do, whatever their free time is, if it's screen time, if it's reading, whatever it is, you've got to be aware of what they're doing and what they're watching, what they're seeing. It's not a matter of just turning them loose and letting them go. You've got to be aware. You've got to know what they're doing. But by the same token, they don't go to school every day and not have at least one recess period where they have to just go and
Sure.
and just be a kid and just relax and just play and have fun. So that's something that's built into them. It was built into all of us when we were kids, right? So you can't turn that off just because they're stuck at home because of some crazy virus, right? So you've got to give them the opportunity and allow them to do that. Now, you don't just go give them free reign, but you do give them what they're capable of being able to handle and what they're capable of being able to manage themselves. We've talked a lot over the years is you have to start training your children early to prepare them for what's going to come in the future, right? And Jet's talked about this from the pulpit as well. If you've got to make the decision instantaneously and you've not thought about it before, the likelihood is you're not going to make the right decision, right? Yeah. So part of this is preparing your kids and helping them to understand what decisions to make. And so, no, give them screen time, give them free time, whatever. It's not meaning that you're shirking your responsibilities. You're actually doing your responsibility as a parent and letting them have some free time and just be able to chill out and relax so that they're not pressured all the time.
So even within that, I'm just curious. This is kind of branching into a different topic slightly, but when you give them the freedom, say for screen time, to watch something on the television, but for you guys experientially, it wasn't just here's the remote, right? I mean,
No.
what did that look like in you guys?
So, you want this?
Well, you go.
So so for us, our boys, there's some very clear boundaries. There are things that are allowed to be watched. There are
Yeah.
things that are not. One of the primary things we did is we blocked on our cable all the channels that were that were a no-go.
Sure.
We did those. There's parental controls on there. It also meant from a very young age, even when they were, even preschool age, we watched what they watched. Because there's some great resources out there to look at. We've used Plugged In Online. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's a fantastic resource that gives parents some insight into what things are. But we always felt like what somebody else might find objectionable, we may not,
Sure.
or we may, or it may not be appropriate for that particular child. There's lots of
Yeah.
variables. But for us, it looked like, in daily practice, we watched what they watched.
Doing it with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We were there, and then we talked about it.
Sure.
What's good, what's not, is this something, that we want to watch again, or is this something that maybe, that's probably not something that's beneficial. And of course, we would use the verse from Philippians about things that are, true or of virtue, that have good worth, all those things to say, is it feeding you anything good? If not, what's the purpose? Why are we watching it? And so, and still now there's things that, we have to say that's other families that may be okay. For ours, it's
Sure.
not. And that doesn't mean that we're saying it's not for somebody else, but
Well,
it's a
and
choice we
again,
make.
that passage you referenced in Philippians, using that as a guide,
Sure.
not just for TV time, but any free time, really that helps to your point, Anthony, to make that decision. Is this a good choice? So it's not just, can I watch TV or can I not watch TV?
Yes.
It's, am I making a good choice of what I'm watching or how I'm playing or who I'm playing with, and all those things associated with how you're spending your time. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Well, and something else to that too. We heard a parent say recently that you don't just watch the first episode of a show
Yeah.
and then deem it good or bad, right? Because the TV folks know, the movie folks know that first couple of episodes, folks are going to be watching, they're going to be looking.
Sure.
It's those third and fourth and fifth episodes where they start to put things in there that may not be what you want your kids to see. So again, it's not just turning them loose and letting them go, and it's not just starting out at the beginning, but it's checking up through the process. And you may realize, hey, first couple of episodes, they were fine, didn't have a problem. Third episode, there's something in there that we don't need to do, and we need to go back and change what we've told you can do.
Yeah.
So,
But letting them see that.
but letting them see
Absolutely,
that.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Two things that came to mind while you were talking about that is one, some of our parents, as their kids get older, have said, like, my child's getting harder to talk to. Like, how do I talk to my child? And doing simply that, watching the same things they watch, listening to the same things they listen to, you've got common ground. Or I don't know, living life with a character they're watching. You can have conversations about that at the dinner table. You can,
Well, it's similar to dating. I mean, that's kind of a weird comparison, but it really is, the person that you're dating, you want to know what they're interested in. You want to know what they're doing. You try to find ways to engage in what interests them, and y'all find common ground. It's the same way as your kids get older. You have to, you kind of have to adjust, have to reinvent yourself a little bit to figure out, okay, how do I stay engaged with this child? And that's going to mean sometimes trying to find some common ground on some things like that. So, yeah.
and I love that y'all said about things that your kids watch. One child might be able to watch something and be unaffected by it, and then another child, the way people speak to each other or the way they
Yes.
interact might affect. And so I immediately thought of my sisters and how all three of us respond very differently to different things. And so I thought, that's powerful. Or keeping that in mind, that one rule doesn't have to apply to all of your children.
Right. And we
in
tell our
regards to
children that all the
watching.
time. You're not the same child, so you don't have the same rules. Everybody's treated equally, but never the same.
Yeah.
Never the same.
That's
So-
good.
Good to write
Write
that.
that down.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, another question that that we've had asked is, what are some healthy habits that we can create during this excess of time that will translate to our busy schedule? Kind of gets back to normal.
So I love this because my favorite is, we call it lingering at the dinner table. So we've always had family meals, and that's important at our house. But lately, since nobody's got to be at, this, that, or whatever, we find ourselves just kind of sitting around the dinner table. We've started some silly traditions. One of our boys loves to ask just random questions. So we will sit at the dinner table and he'll just say, random question. And he throws out something like, which do you do first? Do you put sock shoe or sock shoe shoe? So which, I know these questions. So which start out kind of silly, but it's great because you're laughing. Your children are seeing the human side of you, right?
Yeah,
that
sure.
goes beyond just mom and dad who make the rules. My boys affectionately occasionally call me the crusher of all things fun. So, because
Affectionately call you
they
out.
really do. They really do, because I laugh and say, when I say no, they say, "Are you the crusher of all things fun?" And I say, "Absolutely." I hold the world
crushing.
title. So, but it gives them an opportunity to see you laugh, to be silly.
Sure.
So lingering around the dinner table, taking those walks outside. One thing that may sound a little counterintuitive right now with having the kids at home all the time is making healthy habits for you personally, right? Making sure that if you that you're having that time alone with the Lord, figuring out what that looks like and how that can work in your schedule later. And for us, making sure that during this time that you have time with your spouse, and that your children see you have time with your spouse. We take dinner after dinner walks, and our kids will say, "Can we go?" Nope. You can't go. No, it's mom and dad. And they make faces, but really it's giving them that confidence. So healthy habits, spending more time at the table, doing things that are going to improve your life, spiritual life, and with your spouse, and trying new things, involving the kids in daily activities, cooking, and a lot of those kind of different things. Those are all great habits to carry forward.
That's
So,
good. Well, and I think that's so important, because you think about the amount of time people have, with their kids. They may be realizing, some of the things that we were rushing to get to not be able to say, to your example, linger at the dinner table. They may be realizing those things really aren't quite as important to take up that much time, where we have to rush past these moments, where we have to rush past dinner or the evening walk, or fill in the blank.
Sure.
Because they're rushing to get to something that they have habitually thought of as important, but are realizing, maybe I should cut that. Maybe I should cut that out.
Yeah. And I think that answers one of the questions that was asked. I'm realizing that we are too busy. How do I decide which things to cut out when my kids are back in school and extracurricular activities?
Yeah, and we talked about that, and we actually talked about it last night at the dinner table with our boys, and just kind of asked them that same question, and we got some really good answers from them too. But first thing, just pray about it, right? Pray about what you're doing, and it, a lot of folks don't, I think, necessarily think to pray about those kind of things. But what would God tell you to do, right? Sometimes he tells you to do it. Sometimes he tells you not to do it. And sometimes he just really doesn't give you great direction on that. But pray about it and see if it honors God and what you're doing, and those kind of things. We've always had some non-negotiable things that we did, right? Sunday was church, Wednesday night was church. We had some other things those are the things that we do, and it doesn't matter what else is going on during those times. We're not going to spend our time doing that because we've already committed to those things, and those things are important. But by the same token, you want to be able to allow your kids to do things and experience things and have fun and enjoy their stuff. But think about it. Is it something that you want your kids to do, or is it something that they want to do? When you look at that activity or whatever it is, when they're out there doing it, or are they having fun? Are they enjoying themselves? Or are they miserable when they come off the field, or they come out of the piano room? Or are you miserable for having to take them there, right? If you're not enjoying it, if you're not having fun doing it, maybe that's not something that you ought to be doing. Now, that's not to say that you don't need to consider the future benefits of
Sure.
what you get your children into, right? So I think music is very important, and learning to play an instrument is a good way of doing that. And so they may not necessarily want to go take piano lessons or guitar lessons or whatever. That may be something, though, that you can do and to prepare them for the future, something that they learn, find comfort in, that they enjoy. So you may want to do that anyway. But again, just pray about it. Ask God to tell you what you need to do. And one of our boys put it pretty easily, is don't fall into the fallacy of the cost of spent time, which means that,
No, you said
hey,
he said that. He said it.
He
really
said that word.
easily.
Oh, yeah. He did.
Yeah.
He did. Yeah.
Yeah.
He actually called it sunken time fallacy.
Yeah,
Those were his exact
let's go
words.
back and explain that.
the sunken time
to me.
fallacy.
Dumb it down for me.
So-
Anthony.
So, for example, and I'm not saying this is,
Yeah.
This was Josh.
I'm not saying this activity is good or bad, but say you've got a child that's playing soccer,
Yeah.
right? And they've played soccer, they're 11 years old now. They played soccer for 8 years. They played it since they were 3 years old. Well, you've got 8 years invested in soccer.
I see.
Me as a parent, I'm thinking, man, I've got 8 years invested in
stick with it.
soccer. We're going to stick with it.
Yeah.
Well, you may realize that after 8 years, that's really not what your kid wants to do. Don't let what you've already put into it drive you to make a bad decision to stay in something that you really, the kids don't enjoy, the parents don't enjoy, or is just not good for the family. There's a lot of good activities out there, and there are a lot of good things for kids and families to do, but not all of those activities are the right thing for every kid or every family.
Or every season.
Or every season, or every kid in every family. We've got 4 boys, and they're all interested in similar things, but they're also interested in very different things. So it wouldn't work if we forced one of them to do their brother's favorite thing because they have no interest in it whatsoever.
Yeah.
So just read your kids. Try to look at them, understand what they're enjoying, what they're not enjoying, and pray about it. Ask God to lead you, and He will. He'll show you what you need to do and how you need to invest in your kids.
And I love how that was set up and worded. Just the freedom that it gives for parents to know that just because you've spent time in this particular
And it may have been
activity-
good time.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It may have been
a
great
good
for your
time.
family in a season.
But you don't have to continue. That making a decision, and I think that frees people up on not just on the back end as you described, but also I got little
Investing, yeah.
kids, right? So I'm thinking, okay, what thing? Because I'm feeling pressure on the front end of what thing are they going to do for the rest of their life? That's the lesson I want them to have, or the sport I want them to play, or that frees me even just hearing that. Because now I'm thinking, they could do something for 2 or 3 years, and that's not wasted time. That's a good investment, but it doesn't have to be the thing that they do for the rest of their. I don't have to figure that out today. In fact, I don't have to figure it out. I mean, the Lord knows, and as you said, just praying about it, and really what I'm gathering, if I could almost summarize it, is it's not so much stewarding your child's time. I mean, even though maybe for little kids, that's probably most accurate. But really what you guys are describing in your family is you're stewarding your child and teaching them how to steward their time.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And to make choices and to go to the Lord in prayer and to go and search God's Word and make wise choices in the fear of the Lord that reflect how we want to spend time that is beneficial for our soul, beneficial for our family, beneficial for others around us. I mean, those are great principles to live by.
Well, and I will add this too, that just on the flip side. So we've had boys that have started sports seasons, got in the middle of it and just really didn't enjoy it. We've made them continue on to finish that season. I'm not saying quit in the middle of a season for something.
Yeah.
Because there's some value in learning,
There's another
perseverance.
principle at play
There's
there.
other principles at play there. But we didn't play that sport another season after that, right? Or we didn't do that
That was me in
activity
basketball.
after that, right?
It's me in basketball.
So don't hear it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But absolutely don't think just because you've always done it that that's the way you always
Well,
need to
and
do it.
can y'all, off the top of your head, what is one thing, as you put it, good but not best, that you remember having to say, either with your child or just as parents, hey, we're not going to do this.
Yeah, so I'm thinking in particular about one son who was very talented musically. He played a horn. He played in band for 5 years. 5 years, and actually had a natural talent for it. He was great. And then but it began to be something that was a chore, and we watched his demeanor change when it was time for that practice. We watched when he would come home and he felt defeated, and there was just something, even though he was excelling at it, he wasn't happy, and he wasn't taking away anything from Philippians. There was nothing pure and good and wholesome and honest and true in it, because he didn't like it anymore. And all of a sudden we looked at each other and said, why are we doing this? And so he came to us and said, I just don't think we want to continue. And we said, well, pray about it. Ask God what he would have you do, and then come back and let's talk. And he did. And he came back and talked to us, and we sat down and said, if you've prayed about it and you feel that this is what God's telling you to do, finish out this year, and then you don't have to do it again. And that was such a freedom for him. And he actually last night said that was a watershed moment where he realized he could make good decisions based on what God told him. And so there it is. You just say,
What a
giving them that
confidence.
opportunity. Yeah. So,
And he was able to make that
and he
decision
made
before
that
he left
decision.
home.
Yeah, he did. He made that decision. And we, as much as maybe we would have liked to see him finish because he did have the talent and everything else, we realized that he had made the right decision. And there's something amazing as a parent to see God speak to your child hear from God, your child act, and then God's faithfulness in that. So,
Yeah.
Man.
So to the skeptic parent who's hearing that and they're saying, but how do I know? How do I know if my kid is listening to the Lord and they're really trying to make a wise decision, or if they just don't want to do it
Yeah.
and they don't want to do a hard thing that's, as you put it, going to lead to something beneficial later? How do you discern those things in the moment?
I think on your knees, you pray about it. I never tell my children to pray about something that we don't pray about it as well. And so, and if they come back to us and say, if they come back to us and say, I think God's saying this, and we've not heard that, then we'll say, okay, let's continue to pray about that. And so, and we go back and pray again. And so we earnestly see what is the Lord, because you don't want your children to doubt whether or not they can hear from the Lord themselves. And I don't want them to live on my faith or my prayers. They need to hear from the Lord themselves. And so, that's an easy, I guess that maybe sounds like an easy out, but that's the honest answer is you just pray about it.
Yeah.
And then I think there's something deep in us that if you've watched your child and you see that they are genuinely miserable, and God has not given you an absolute, they need to finish this, then I think you think they've probably heard what the Lord's telling them. So, and have some confidence in that. So
that's good. That's so good.
Yeah. Okay, this one is from a parent of 4. Says, I've actually been busier during quarantine because of work. When I'm finally home, I'm exhausted. How can I maximize that time with my kids?
Well, and so this season for quarantine, what I do has been deemed essential. And so I've had to go to the office every day and work just like normal. Nothing's really changed for me from that standpoint. So I understand being busy all day outside of the house and coming home, and your kids have been there all day, and they want to spend time with you, and I'm thankful that they do, and that's awesome. But we were talking about it, and we asked our boys this same question because we wanted to know what their opinion was. We had our own ideas about it too, and each one of them said, hey, quality time with us is far more important than the quantity of time with us. We would much rather spend 15 minutes with you, just bonding with you, your full attention, doing whatever we're doing, than spend, a whole day where we're all isolated ourselves. We may be in the same room, but we may be isolated and going about our own different things. So I think to speak to that question, really trying to maximize and get the most quality time out of the time that you have with your kids is important. Now, practically speaking, what does that mean? Well, you've got to know what your kids are interested in. Yeah. And it may mean that you come in and you sit down and you watch their favorite television program with them. It may mean that you talk about their favorite subject or their favorite sport or something like that. It may mean that you go outside and play catch with them or do something like that. Whatever it is that you can connect with them on a deeper, more intimate level is really what they're craving, right? It's what we crave.
Sure.
It's what they crave as well. So that's it. Find something that you both can enjoy. And hey, it doesn't have to be their favorite thing, and it doesn't have to be your favorite thing, but it can be something that you both enjoy and that you like. Yeah. And if you've got multiple kids, you may be able to do a group activity with all of them, but you may need to do some one-on-one time with each one, because depending on how old they are, what their interests are, what they're able to do and that kind of stuff, you may not be able to have just one big activity that covers all those bases. Yeah. But just spend quality time with them and just let them know that you love them, because that's really what they're looking for, right? Is to know that you as a parent love them and find them valuable enough that you want to spend time with them. Yeah. And it really doesn't matter what you're doing at that point, if they understand that and sense that.
Yeah. Well, I think the lingering at the dinner table can hit all ages, all interests, because asking the goofy questions, like if you can invent an ice cream flavor, what would it, and giving them all ears and then letting you be goofy too, I think that can captivate all ages. So a similar question in the same vein of working during quarantine. Balancing working from home and helping my kids do useful things with their time is exhausting. How do I do both well?
Oh, is it exhausting?
Oh, yeah.
I am.
It's harder.
So it is harder. It is really, it is a challenge. I mean, let's be honest. It is a challenge. Mm-hmm. So I'm working from home, and my job is such that the COVID thing has actually made us even more busy than we would typically be. So it is a lot. It's a lot. And all of my children are doing distance learning. And as I said before, we've got college, high school, middle school, and elementary school. So I think the first thing that I learned after week one, now week one was a hot mess at our house. So week 2, week 3. Yeah, the struggle was real. Yeah. So, but after week one, I think I realized, first and foremost, be reasonable with your expectations. Work right now is not going to look like it did before. Your productivity is not going to look like it did before. And what all the kids did is not going to look like what it did before. It's not going to be, and I'm not saying slack, but I'm saying find grace. Give grace to those around you, give grace to your children, and give grace to yourself. Everybody else is going through the same thing, so we're all going to be doing a little bit differently. But that's the biggest thing, is to set that. And then we figure out what's essential, accomplish that first, and then the rest can kind of come in as it needs to. So, I said we have certain things that are required time-wise, and then everything else, if it happens, great. If not, then, we've still had a productive day. So I also, for me personally, working from home, I find that if I can work in the same area that they are in, if I'm doing something that doesn't require my full attention, if I can sit at the dining room table and maybe check emails or those kind of things that don't require an intense concentration, that helps when I do have those moments when I have to take that call that I have to kind of isolate myself. Yeah. Right. So finding that balance of when it's possible, and then realizing that your children are capable of a lot more than we give them credit for. And so, don't hover while they're doing that schoolwork. Let them do that schoolwork. Obviously, go back and check it with them. Let them know you're there for questions, but, don't micromanage things. So,
That's good. So and that idea of like your interaction with their time, however they're spending, whether they're spending in school, whether they're playing, watching something, but your involvement, direct involvement. So you rewind for just a little bit, so go back in your parenting days, and you got smaller kids, so all these kids are 10 and under,
Sure.
right? I would imagine with 4 different kids, unique, that you have some that independence came more naturally. For others, they were more clingy or needy. I don't know how you describe that, but just, hey, what are we doing? They're right up under your armpit. I got one at home that, if given any free time, he's looking back to me like, great, what are we doing? Because we're doing it together, right? Obviously. Whereas we tell our daughter, hey, go play. And she's like, great. And she just goes.
2 hours later.
Yeah, 2 hours later, she
Where
comes
is
out
she
of her
still
room
here?
like, hey, are y'all still here? Because I was fine. So how do you, obviously each child's different, so your response to each child is going to be different. But how do you make sure for the one that you are spending quality time when you probably could get away with not, because they're okay with just being independent? Whereas how do you gently say to the other, hey, you need to just go in the backyard for a minute? This is a deeply personal question. I'm really this is why
That's
this is only why I invited you up here, so that I could
All
ask
purpose.
So I
this
could know
question.
it.
Yeah, this is
Gotcha.
it. So
So do you?
No, you go ahead.
I will say we actually, and they're all very different. We have some that are very much independent, some that are not, that crave that time together.
Yeah.
So what we have figured out is make time for the child that doesn't seem to always want your time. Have those moments where with your daughter, for example, for one of our boys who you could say go play and he would disappear for hours on end. And so, we made it a conscious effort to include him because it's not good for him to be isolated. So, finding that time to spend with him. And then with those that were a little bit closer to home, I found things like I would make up, and this sounds really silly, but I would make up like a little bag of something that was something I knew they would really enjoy. And when it came time for that playtime, I would say, there's something really cool in here. And I want you to go in your room and figure it all out. Maybe it was a puzzle that they liked. Maybe it was something to try to get them to do it on their own. Something to give them that little sense of independence. Obviously, if they were really struggling and needed my time, then giving them that time. But those other times when it was frankly just a crutch to keep them from having to make their own decisions,
right,
then it's time for you to kind of spread out. And so gently just, finding things that I knew they would enjoy and saying, I went in the game room and I set this up for you to go and put this puzzle together and it is so cool and I'm going to set the timer and in 30 minutes I'm coming to check and see how far you are. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but I will say those children eventually do. Most of them get to that point as long as you find ways to encourage that independence in them.
that's good. That's good.
I think that's all I got.
Well, hey, guys, thank y'all so much for coming. And
So every week at this time,
Yeah, yeah.
you're good with coming back?
we're just
I'll start writing down.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
4-month-old is
we'll just
doing.
bring our own personal questions.
There you go.
there
Yeah, we've
you
got a
go.
hotline. So just,
great.
No, I'm
Okay.
kidding.
That's great.
Really and truthfully, I will say, though, that's one thing that I would encourage young parents is find somebody who's walked before you and reach out. That has been the biggest encouragement in our parenting lives, has been looking to other parents who've done it before, who failed, who've succeeded, and who are willing to share. So find out.
That's great.
know.
And as far as like so obviously a personal person
Absolutely.
resource, finding someone, but then any additional resources that you guys would say, this is the best thing that I've read or seen. And
So there's lots of them.
Yeah.
I, especially with boys, spend a lot of time with Dr. Dobson. Focus on the Family has a lot of great resources. They have a lot of great books. He had a Bring Up Boys book that was just phenomenal. Because as a mama, I didn't get it. So it's a great book. Paul Tripp has some fantastic books. there's a lot of right now. There's a lot of resources. There's a Bible app that's fantastic if your kids are a little older and use those apps. It gives them a Bible plan. You can actually join it with them and track them. Right now, media has incredible stuff for every age. We have found, you want to talk about screen time, that's been a godsend because there's things on it for the younger ones. There's things on it for the older ones. It's across the board. All of those things, and using the stuff that the church has online. We've used a lot of that, especially during this. So
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thank y'all so much for coming.
Thank y'all.
Being with us.
We enjoy
And,
it.
thanks for your time. And for those of you listening or watching, the Baileys do teach a life group here at Crossgates for young families, and I'd love for you to get plugged into that. You can go to our website, crossgates.org, and check out our life groups page, and that has all the information you would need in order to sign up if you need a life group. Other than that, we're glad that you tuned in, and God bless you today.